Hi everyone, this video looks at the tariff issue from a second perspective. This perspective comes from some commentators, notably, especially a few influential figures who support Donald Trump, including those in the financial sector like Blackstone and Morgan Stanley's Diamond. So, how do they view the tariffs? Well, the most important thing is that Elon Musk, I can tell you, will soon leave this government. Because on the tariff issue, his views are completely opposite to Donald Trump's, which was the concern I raised when he entered political activities. You support Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is harming your interests. Now this statement is proven true, like the saying, you don't feel the pain until it hits you, and now it hurts. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Summers warned, and he is an economist I greatly respect, that the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump are very much like the oil crisis. This is what I want to say, it really resembles the oil crisis. Why does stagflation occur? I just realized in the U.S., actually, it's like this. The first oil crisis quadrupled the price of oil, and the second was due to the Iran-Iraq war. So, why does stagflation happen? Firstly, the U.S. economy was already in recession, with many people unemployed. So why were prices rising? It's driven by the supply chain, because when imports are delayed, prices rise, creating a ripple effect. So on one hand, prices are high, and on the other, there's a recession. This is the worst-case scenario, causing the U.S. stock market to suffer. For 10 years, you could invest and still lose. But that's how it was. At this point, the U.S. stock market started to peak, as you can see. The first oil crisis started in 1973, and by 1980, you can see 1.9, 1.1 still losing. The U.S. stock market, this is the standard and Poor's 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, every one of them was affected. That is to say, if there is stagflation, you can expect that over the next 7 or 8 years, the value of stocks will have dropped by at least 2/3, or at the very least, by half. It's not enough to just hold on to your stocks long-term if there's stagflation, got it? The reason for stagflation is due to supply shortages, which lead to rising prices and drive inflation. In fact, the U.S. economy has already fallen into a recession, so the Federal Reserve doesn't know what to do. Take a look at the first oil crisis, comparing global stocks with Hong Kong's drop from 1973 to 1974. During the oil crisis, Hong Kong fell. It dropped by 80%. At that time, Hong Kong fell from 1,700 points. The UK dropped by 69% in 1 year, and the US dropped by 42%. When inflation started, were you scared? I was scared of this. Standard and Poor's historical performance, this is too early. After that, we saw Standard and Poor's, which was concerning, that's it. Standard and Poor's started here. Actually, it also started here, and it kept rising. If it returns to this line above, then it would be unbearable. That's it. I'm telling everyone, how many points did it fall back by? This Standard Poor's. This is, it fell back by 3,002 points. This is it. Summers said, he wrote that the most direct impact is driving up prices. This doesn't need consideration. This is, prices have already increased in the U.S., and the chain reaction leads to higher unemployment rates, reduced investment. Prices have gone up, and some people, some industries are in decline, leading to unemployment. Some people are afraid to invest, afraid to spend. This is a typical supply shock. The Federal Reserve doesn't know whether to raise or lower interest rates. Now some people think that in a recession the Federal Reserve should lower rates, but what if inflation rises? In April, you'll see, in April and May, the inflation is going to be incredible. I will eventually explain to everyone why that inflation is incredible. I think that inflation will reach over 10%. This time it's inflation of over 10%. He once cited an analysis. Donald Trump was the first person who didn't impose tariffs, and it was almost the same scale of shock. This needs to be proportional. During Donald Trump's time, it was actually over 300 billion. The tariffs on goods were increased by more than 20%. The effective tariffs were 50 to 60 billion. The impact was small at that time. This time, it is 6 to 7. Back then, the impact you felt because you multiply it by 10 times it equals today's impact. Extremely high tariffs and the totalitarianism of buying good things and putting them there, this I don't support what you're doing. This is a policy of Donald Trump, a kind of mercantilism, virtualism, international mercantilism. Many countries, the import and export of gold and silver, what was actually happening in mercantilism. But today, they're still doing this because our brave people are still fearful of money. This mindset of Donald Trump is still somewhat limited, stuck in the 19th century thinking, one of mercantilism, one of isolationism. There's always someone, a leader, who returns to isolationism and for future expansion. We always believe that the empire is wonderful, always wanting to involve Canada, Greenland, and Panama. All right, when Donald Trump made his statement, the steamroller still wants to mix in soybeans, too. Of them bought a bed that big, and there are quite a few roads that need to be used extensively. Suddenly, a small blacksmith got to work because there was strong opposition to the significant implementation of reciprocal tariffs, but in Toronto, it's more common. How many of us are there? Some governments are relatively numerous, mainly from Guangdong, and they won't widely implement this tariff because it would cause ongoing harm to the U.S. economy. It can't withstand it. Southwest, they reduce the road surface to avoid outsiders thinking that it supports this reciprocal tariff. I'll return it to you after testing NAHA. In the U.S., about 70% is almost the same, and it goes back and forth, with 30% imported to me in Ethiopia. Inspiration is needed for that motor, and Taiwan has a bone to pick. Taiwan collects 1%, right? Inspiration is needed. And what Taiwan has, we already have. What the mainland has, I can catch up with, but still, many more inspirations are needed. Lithium iron phosphate battery. If I add tariffs to a wheel with a lithium iron phosphate battery on my car, how many percent tariffs are collected? 80-something%. For one car. Or two different things, adding wheat, I lazily add up to $7,000 or $8,000 for one car. This is the first. Second, like a wheel with a lithium iron phosphate battery, the battery is all about energy saving, and I want to repeatedly warn about this. From the perspective of the most expensive people, the standout point of the test results is its energy saving part, which includes the Mac Pack and Powerwall. All of these rely on the lithium iron phosphate battery of the zero-era wheel. If China and the US are imposing tariffs on each other, 100% of the signed contracts would have to be canceled. Wouldn't they need to renegotiate? What about the power to make a pack? C. Cost, and also the battery assembly. Over a dozen below, it earns a killing. C. Cost. Grows for a long time. It's like a dog. Dog. Make. A pack has a 40% margin. You have a brand with the same company in Hong Kong. A family is very fierce, and Elon Musk's assets evaporated by $31 billion US. It's said he once privately urged to cancel tariffs, but was refused. Donald Trump even threatened to impose higher tariffs on China. That sounds like All the financial and tech bigwigs have been to Mar-a-Lago meeting. Donald Trump wanted to disperse the way back but failed. This makes me struggle with this result. This business tycoon, everyone, business tycoons can, Liu Biaolei. The U.S. government ultimately proved not to be a populist government, and your business tycoon is not the closest to that rescue of Teddy Roosevelt. No one expected it. The CCP has been promoting national territory right. This kind of oligarch controlling the U.S. government is nothing further from the truth. When Theodore Roosevelt succeeded McKinley as president, he was against monopolies, so the richest and wealthiest dozen or so oligarchs in America, those oligarchs, Rockefeller, Morgan, the coal barons, all went to see him and tried to persuade him. The U.S. government enforced the antitrust law to break them up, and as a result, New Jersey Oil had to be broken up into 6 oil companies, or rather one of the world's largest. 7 oil companies, which included Mobil. Then they also dismantled Morgan's railroad and steel alliances. In fact, Elon Musk has long opposed tariffs, as tariffs are unfavorable to Tesla, and I didn't pay attention. First, this has always been ignored, as there are many cars sold in the U.S., and of course, others have already targeted him, so everyone ignores him, and ignoring his energy business is even more dangerous. Why? It could provoke retaliation, like not selling his cars in Canada anymore. Will Europe start targeting his cars? This? Very many places people want to hit Donald Trump, so they go after Elon Musk. The company, in 2020, during Donald Trump's first term, had already sued the government as long as the tariffs were ineffective. He had previously sent a letter and signed representing Tesla to persuade the government not to impose these tariffs. In 2020, he filed a lawsuit with the U.S. International Trade Court against the tariffs imposed by the U.S. government on parts imported from China. This lawsuit targets List 3 and List 4, which imposed tariffs of 25% and 7.5% on $200 billion and $120 billion, respectively. These tariffs were implemented arbitrarily, capriciously, and abused discretionary power. The lawsuit seeks a court declaration that these tariffs are invalid and demands a refund of the tariffs already paid, along with interest. It's fine if they lose. Elon Musk attended a rally organized by Italy's far-right coalition on Saturday, kindly advising not to go to those places. Through a video link, he was interviewed by Italy's deputy prime minister from the League Party. He hopes for zero tariffs between the U.S. and Europe to establish a free trade zone, and he criticized Navarro. That's it. All right, Chuck Schumer. Indeed, Schumer said that Trump has brought chaos. His tariffs have actually led to the largest tax increase in 50 years. Secondly, he accuses Elon Musk's Doge of harming Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The market has gone through the most volatile 3 days. Is the Republican Party in Congress going to do this? And then cut taxes for billionaires? Elon Musk said, "Chuck, I initially thought that the fans fraud you are getting a share of the money. You wouldn't oppose it because of this, would you?" That's it. All right, his brother, a member of Tesla's board, who can't control his brother, Kimball Musk, harshly criticized Donald Trump as the president with the highest tax rate, imposing a structurally permanent tax on American consumers through tariff policies. His brother replied, "Donald Trump, well, the oil prices have dropped again, and interest rates have fallen. Come on, interest rates just went up a bit, that's it. Then food prices went down, no inflation, and with the additional 34% tariff on China, China's stock market plummeted significantly." Huh? Celebrating in the Chinese stock market falling. Huh? Are we celebrating because our stock market is falling? Our stock market has dropped too. The CEO of Blackstone Group, John Clay, warned investors not to be too optimistic about Donald Trump administration's tariff policies and make hasty investment decision. Everyone knows how. Don't be afraid. And just buy stocks. Actually, he said something like that. Is it because he holds a lot of stocks? So this, I don't want to speculate on his intentions. However, his perspective is shared by some people who believe that Donald Trump will eventually cut back on tariffs. It's important to be patient and watch the progress of negotiations, otherwise making some short-term decisions could mean missing out on opportunities like not buying or selling. The Donald Trump administration might react and decide to make concessions. Ultimately, the outcome could be different. I think the Donald Trump administration will eventually make some concessions, but the question is when they will do so, whether it will be before causing irreparable damage. This is according to a report published on April 7th, where Morgan Stanley analysts downgraded the ratings of large and medium-sized banks from attractive to in line with the market. Financial institutions are suffering. They also downgraded the financial advisory and consumer finance sectors. Industry perspectives. These analysts say that the trade situation is causing a significant shift towards a noticeable slowdown in domestic GDP, with the risks of pessimism and recession rising significantly. Morgan Stanley recently published a report stating that the tariffs increased from February to March by 20%, along with existing tariffs, have already raised the weighted tariffs on the U.S. against China to as high as 65%. China cannot rely on slowly leave to the isolated village relaxation policies to counteract without adding that 34% at that time, the stocks that fell were the ones affected. Over 70%, this is their proportion. More than 70% of these companies rely on the U.S. This 62%, companies like BYD and Lenovo, all have 30%. All these companies are larger. Jen said, compared to the 2018 or 2019 U.S.-China trade war, this time the impact on China's economic growth is greater than back then. Of course, it can't be compared fundamentally. Now it's on top of goes. I always say, if Donald Trump threatens to add more by midnight today, if China doesn't retract that 34%, Donald Trump will add 50% to it. It is believed that China negotiations are reduced and the threshold for lowering tariffs is even higher. This time the range of tariff impacts is broader, affecting global economic growth. As for the United States, I can say, let me give you a simple conclusion. That fundamentally, it cannot be supplemented. China directly goes to the U.S., through Hong Kong to the U.S., through ASEAN and Mexico, Canada to the U.S. In total, it's about 800 to 900 billion USD worth of goods. If the tariffs are raised to 100%, it won't work. There's no way to make it work, and the whole world can't make up for it. Within half a year, there's no place in the world that can replenish these goods. No one has such large production capacity. So the shortage would be like an oil shortage, causing a crazy rise in U.S. prices, leading to stagflation. Set the standard. And Poor's drops another 7 to 8%, unless the White House abandons the tariff plan or the Federal Reserve signals a policy easing. The Federal Reserve will not signal a policy easing. It will definitely raise interest rates, leading to stagflation, with only inflation rising. The Federal Reserve's first task is to control inflation first, then employment. That Standard & Poor's drops another 7 to 8. This is the target price. They set a new target price. Hang Seng Index, 17,000 points. 6,000 points for state-owned enterprises, 56 points for the China Index, 3,140 points for the Shanghai and Shenzhen Index. This is good. The Standard & Poor's dropped from 6,147 to 5,000, almost 20%, almost 20%. All right, the most important thing is Diamond. What does Diamond say? In recent years, the recent tariffs, he really supports Donald Trump. Originally, he didn't expect Donald Trump to impose so many tariffs, which could increase inflation and the possibility of a recession. Is the tariff list causing a recession? That remains to be seen, but it will definitely drag down growth and slow it down. The current GDP growth is definitely slowing. Are we falling into a recession? I'll tell you, that depends on how much prices rise. The situation we're seeing now, I'll explain it to you. Everyone, including Taiwan, won't be shipping to the United States for the next 3 months. Why? Because after you impose tariffs on me, I don't know if I can sell. Exactly, it's a big problem. If the US has a huge stockpile, there will be storage costs, so I won't deliver, including Volkswagen. They won't deliver either. Many car companies are out of stock. I've stopped it in the US first, so what now? Actually, the idea is to add tariffs to encourage people to place orders. If someone really buys, then I know there's demand, and only then will I resume shipping. So what situation will arise in the next 3 months? When everyone is afraid to ship their goods to the US because I'm afraid to do it. What if I ship Chinese goods, and suddenly tariffs are increased again? The shortage in the next 3 months will be very chaotic, and the supply chain will be extremely disordered in the coming 6 months. Everyone needs to adjust the supply chain, and it will stabilize after 6 months. Donald Trump's tariff policies will drive up prices, leading to global economic decline, weakening the United States' global leadership position because he strongly supports Donald Trump. Originally, JPMorgan Chase increased the probability of a global recession to 60%. Goldman Sachs believes there is a 45% chance of falling into a recession in the next 12 months, up from the original 35%. It was underestimated, according to a new client report from Wall Street investors Wolfe Research. If tariffs in the future remain at 4 to 6 months, then this is what I mean by remaining unchanged. This assumes Donald Trump does not back down. I say that if he can hold out for a year, they say only 6 months, a U.S. recession is inevitable without negotiations. The current tariffs are enough to cause a recession within 9 months, and it won't recover. Wolfe Research strategists say investors have recently been asking about the extent of the losses. They are studying the possibility of no negotiations or settlements in the next 4 to 6 months. Actually, using game theory, I tell you, this is a game of chicken. Game and something called hawk dove. Theory, there are two. One is the chicken game to see who backs down first, and the second is the hawk strategy and dove strategy. Strategy shift. In this case, China and the United States have clearly fallen into a hawk versus hawk confrontation, resulting in mutual harm. When you use these strategies, both Donald Trump and President Xi are acting as hawks. It is estimated that in 4 to 6 months, to reach a reconciliation, a series of games is needed to then reduce an escape from the prisoner's dilemma. The damage is not limited to tariffs, as the financial markets have clearly shown in recent months. A noticeable tightening with the accumulation of market weakness and a decline in GDP. This segment ends here.